All right, everyone, welcome back here to our Norman County Political Forum. Again, my name is Mark Askelson. I'm News Director here at RJ Broadcasting. Tonight's event is being broadcast on 106.5 KRJB. A big thanks to the Norman County EDA and 106.5 KRJB and the City of Ada for allowing us to host this debate here tonight at the Ada Event Center. Earlier today, we heard from our commission candidates, Leanne Hall and John Hint. Our sheriff's race was just a moment ago with Jeremy Thornton and Tim Bowe, and now we bring ourselves to the legislative race for Minnesota House District 4B. Joining me on stage now is Paul Marquardt, the incumbent, and challenger Jason Peterson. The format here, you guys will be given a reasonable amount of time to answer the question. If you would like to rebuttal, you certainly can. You'll get a brief amount of time to do that. If they're getting too long, I'll ask you guys to cut it short for time. First off, let's start with introductions here today. A little bit about yourself and your reason for running. We'll start with our challenger here, Jason.
I'm Jason Peterson. I am the Republican endorsed candidate here for District 4B. First off, thank you everybody for being here. Thank you to KRJB and for broadcasting it and having us all here. You know, I decided to run because I thought there was a real need in this district for a change, and I thought in the state there's some real problems, and I think that we need to address and we need to solve. And my two main campaign points have been lowering taxes. You know, Minnesota was just ranked as the worst state when it comes to taxes in the United States, worse than even California when it comes to income and sales taxes. And we're surrounded by two of the most tax-friendly states in North Dakota and South Dakota, and we need to become more competitive. And then affordable health care. Right now, health care is not affordable. We need to increase competition. We need to knock down these lines in between states, but we also need to knock down these lines within our state so that people can buy health care across state lines and even across the state, because in some areas you might only have one health care provider you can buy from, and that doesn't make it competitive.
Paul?
Well, thank you, Mark and KRJB and Norman County EDA for sponsoring, and I want to thank everyone who's here and the listeners out there, and especially farmers who are out there in harvest right now, and I wish you a very safe and bountiful harvest to those farmers out there working so hard. Also, Mr. Peterson, thank you for being here, and I have truly enjoyed, and it's been an honor to represent Norman County for the last 6 years. And you look around, and you see a lot of things happening in Ada with the economic development, just this event center that we're in right now. What an accomplishment. And these communities like Ada, that's what's going to make rural Minnesota continue to be strong. And now you have the Norman County EDA that's working on promotion. That's great. And I can't go on any further. This is tournament time, Mark. And I know the Cougars and the Titans are just starting their big playoffs, and I know volleyball starts tomorrow night for the Cougars and Titans. Cross-country sectional is on Friday, and the football teams start on Saturday. So good luck to all of those teams. That's one thing also about being a legislator is you get to follow these teams, and they've done wonderful. I wouldn't be able to serve the county of Norman County and the rest of the district if it wasn't for the strong support of my wife, Colleen, who I've been married to for 37 years. Both of my daughters, Lindsay and Ashley, are teachers. I've taught for 35 years now at Dilworth Glendon Felton, and I'm proud to say that they are both into the field of teaching. My oldest daughter, Lindsay, is married to Grant, who is a highway patrol officer in North Dakota, and they have two wonderful children. Addison, who started kindergarten this year, and Lincoln, who is 8 months old, and you used to be able to just set him on the carpet, but not anymore. He is on the move. So why am I running, and why do I think what we can do for rural Minnesota? And it's very simple. It's to keep rural Minnesota first. That is what we need to do, and it involves making sure our communities and schools are safe and that we're supporting our law enforcement officers. It's making sure we have a strong, robust economy, and we do that by investing in education and job skills and infrastructure. We have to also cut taxes for our senior citizens and our families and our farmers and our small businesses. We have to make sure we have affordable and accessible health care. And finally, we have to make sure we take care of our active military and our veterans and our senior citizens. And we can do that. We can keep rural Minnesota strong.
Well, the first topic of the night here over you guys will be education. Specifically, school safety. What needs to be done to make schools safer for our children? We'll start with you, Paul.
Yeah, that, as I talk to superintendents around the area, that is a number one concern, and we can attack that on two fronts. I mean, the number one thing that we have to do as a society is to keep our communities and schools safe. And we have to make sure that when a parent sends their child to school, that they know that that building and that facility is going to be as safe as possible. Because, fortunately, we're in a good area. We hope nothing like this ever happens that happens in other schools. But we have to, and as a state and as a legislator, I have to make sure that we are providing the funds and the resources to make sure that schools can do two things. Number one, harden and make their buildings more secure, and that is entrances and locks and windows and video and whatever they need to do. And on the second side is we have to make sure they have the funding to provide for school resource officers. I'm a strong supporter of putting school resource officers into our school, but also funding our schools dealing with mental health and counselors. We have a lot of concerns dealing with children with mental health concerns right now. We have to make sure we deal with that. So, Mark, it's dealing with not only making our schools facilities safer, but then also dealing with the more human side with our students and dealing with mental health issues.
Jason?
Well, I'm going to mirror a lot of what Marquardt said, because I think Representative Marquardt said, because I think this is an issue that goes across the aisle. This isn't a Republican or Democrat issue. This is an issue about our communities and keeping our communities safe. What we need to do is we need to make sure our schools are locked. We need to make sure our schools are secure when the children are inside. We need to make sure that we have resource officers, that we have properly trained staff inside of our schools. We need to educate the staff and the teachers inside the schools on what to do if an incident like this ever does occur. And we also need to work with the police and the local community, whether it be the county sheriff's office or just the local police department, on what happens and what are the steps that we take right away if something like this does occur. So we need to we also need to make sure that we make the funds accessible to our schools, to our communities, and to our police departments and sheriff's offices, to make sure that that the schools are able to upgrade their facilities to protect our children, and that the community is also able to have the resources necessary to keep our children safe.
There are lots of jobs that need to be filled right now in the state. Lots of trade jobs, specifically electricians, linemen, plumbers, mechanics, you name it. There's lots of trade jobs that are going unfilled. How do we fill them here in the state of Minnesota? Jason?
I think first and foremost we need to make sure that we're getting these kids in high school and we're showing them that there's other job opportunities other than four-year universities and going out and getting long careers. I think we need to push our Detroit Lakes has M State, which is amazing, the technical college there. We need to push these kind of programs and these schools and show that there's real careers that need filling and jobs right away. Because if you go into a two-year degree and you come out as a linesman, or you go in and to go for plumbing, you can come out with a great careers that we need. And I think it's by educating our students and by getting them when they're in middle school and high school and showing them that there's more opportunities out there than going to an expensive private four-year school or going to a four-year university and getting a long degree and then coming out and having to fight and maybe getting a degree in something that there's not too many jobs in, and now all of a sudden they're struggling in debt. We need to show that these are affordable to go to these two-year schools. And I think we need to get these kids younger when they're looking at college, and we need to push our two-year universities and our vocational schools.
Paul?
A recent survey came out and said that we're short about 60,000 of these technical vocational jobs, plumbers, electricians, and welders, and nurses, and contractors. And it also said that within the next 5 years, with the baby boomers retiring, that shortage is going to be about 200,000 jobs short. That's a huge hit to our economy. I've got a proposal I've been working on that I think would solve this problem, and that is to link our vocational and technical colleges back with our high schools like they were prior to 1983. And here's what it would do. It would say to every single senior high school student that before you graduate, you would have the opportunity to learn a job skill, a job set that meets the economy of that area. And what that would do is it would provide jobs for the employers who are looking for these jobs. It would give students these skills before they could be in nursing, a CNA, it could be a number of things. It would keep, usually, if they get a job or they have that, they would stay in the area also. It's a great way to keep people from heading to the Twin Cities. They would stay where they're at. And each high school would kind of know what the economic reality is in the area. And so I think this would be a great move. It would save people a lot of money. What we've done in the last generation, as we've kind of pushed everyone into the 4-year colleges, is we've wound up with this here huge 60,000 job skill gap and huge tuition student debt. That's what we have. And so we've got to go back and really focus on the vocational and technical, and if we put it as, I mean, it would enhance the systems we have right now, the technical and community college system. It would enhance that because you would have more students going through. But instead of waiting later, get the students involved earlier so when they get out of high school with a degree, they can hit the ground running and working for a company locally. But I think that's one of the big things we can do to help our economy and fill those jobs that we're looking to meet.
Let's move on to something a little more party line here, and I have specific questions for each one of our candidates here on this question. You may rebuttal on each one of them. Regarding the Keith Ellison and the Me Too movement, in light of the Me Too movement and raised awareness of sexual assault, how will you, Paul, address the allegations against Minnesota Attorney General candidate Keith Ellison? Would you support him as candidate for Attorney General? Do you support him, or should he remain deputy chair of the Democratic National Committee?
Well, I didn't support him in the primary, and I'm not supporting him in the general election. And it really has nothing to do with that. I served a couple terms with Representative Ellison in the state legislature, and I wasn't a big fan. So, that aside, let's talk about the situation there. And I think, let's look at Judge Kavanaugh's situation and let's look at Keith Ellison's situation. I know in Keith Ellison's situation, the woman says, well, you just have to believe me. I don't have to show evidence, you just have to believe me. Now, sexual harassment is very serious. And we've got to make sure there's no place for that in the legislature, in our workplace, wherever we go. But there still is a jurisprudence, a procedure that has to be followed. And I still believe you're innocent until proven guilty. And so, just like with the Judge Kavanaugh thing, I think to go back to when you're 17 years old to try to defend yourself it's very, very difficult. And I just don't like the process of that, kind of the fact that it's out there and it immediately makes people guilty. And I just don't think that the system is right. But, you know, having said that, is it tough to come forward if you've been sexually, harassed and that? Absolutely. And we have to take that very seriously. But we also have to make sure a process is followed and that all the facts are known before we jump to conclusion. And quite frankly, Mark, you and I both know that it gets way too partisan. So, we tend to support the person and believe the woman in one situation, but then the other one we don't. And depending on the partisan, and that shouldn't be. And I think we've got to treat everything fairly in that situation.
On the lines of partisan, my question for you, Mr. Peterson, do you support President Donald Trump, the face of the political party of the Republicans? Do you support Donald Trump?
Yes, I do. I do support President Trump. I think what President Trump has done in the country over the last few years since becoming president is remarkable. We've seen the lowest unemployment at 4.2, lowest unemployment that we've seen in the last 49 years at 4.2%. We've seen the most jobs created. We've seen lower taxes. We've put more of our hard-earned money back in our citizens' pockets, and we've seen cutting of regulations. And I fully support President Trump and his agenda 100%.
If elected to the House of Representatives, Jason, what would be the first piece of legislation you would like to draft?
It would be to conform Minnesota to the federal tax system. This last last biennium, after the federal cut their taxes, Minnesota needed to change some of the tax laws to be conformed so that we can keep more of our hard-earned money in our pockets, in Minnesotans' pockets, and the legislator failed. This was actually a bill that was drafted in committee by my opponent, and he actually voted against his own bill. While it was in committee, we need to make sure that we are making sure that Minnesotans can keep their hard-earned money in their pocket, so we need to conform to the federal tax standards. There's no reason why we shouldn't. There's no reason why this shouldn't have passed in 2018 in the legislature, and so we need that, and that would be the first piece that we'd hope to pass day one, and work with Speaker Dowd and the Republicans in the House to make sure it's passed.
So let's talk about the tax bill. I really would. And first of all, the tax bill that passed the House, which I authored, I supported and passed the House and had some pretty good tax cuts. And because I worked with the Republicans in doing that tax bill, I was named to the conference committee. I was the only Democrat on the conference committee with a bill that I helped author with Chair Davis and approved. It then went into conference committee. And it came back, remember the conference committee, now the Senate gets their input. And that bill came back, and let me tell you, it was not the same bill. And that's the one I voted against, and here's why. And I would have hoped that you would have voted against it too, because it didn't help our district one bit. The average family of four making $66,000 a year, the tax cut that came out of conference versus the one I supported was 33% less than the one I supported. And for a family of four that had a $40,000 income, the tax cut in the Senate bill was only 1/5 of the one that left the House. And so the bill actually cost more and gave less relief. So I voted no on that. The governor also vetoed that. We went back a third time, and the last tax bill we had those tax cuts back in for the most part, plus an additional $50 million for education. I voted for that, a much better bill. So, hopefully you would, Mr. Peterson, you would have voted no on that bill also. But you have to know that things change as you go, and like I've always done on a bipartisan basis, is I've looked at how do these things impact rural Minnesota in this area. And I knew when that bill came back from conference we could do much better. But one more thing I want to mention is that we do have to do the conformity. And in 2017, we had a really good tax cut bill, which I supported and was on the conference committee, and again, the only Democrat on the conference committee working with Republicans. And one of the things we did for the first time ever was cut taxes on Social Security benefits for seniors by about 25%. Senior citizens right now in Minnesota, 42% of the senior citizens in Minnesota rely on 50% or more of their income on Social Security. And 17% of our seniors rely on Social Security for 90% of their income. And the increase in the last 10 years has only been 1.2% on Social Security. So making that cut for senior citizens, which I was proud to support, and I'm hoping we can go back, and that'd be one of the first things I do this next year, is continue to cut those taxes for senior citizens.
Well, I think we need to go farther than that. What we need to do is we need to make sure that our senior Social Security is not taxed at all. We need to 100% get rid of the tax on Social Security, something that the Democrats will not support. And if we get Democrats back in the State House and we get Democrats in the in the Governor's House, you know, they've said that they will not support that tax, and they want to increase taxes. So what we need to do is we need to make sure that we're fighting against these tax increases, how you do that, and you got to do that with your vote. You got to decide if we want somebody who's going to vote not to cut our taxes, or if we want somebody who's going to fight and make sure that we can keep more of our hard-earned money.
Just as a rebuttal, if I might, I am the lead Democrat on the tax committee. I'm the lead Democrat, and I support all of those tax cuts. Many Democrats support those tax cuts. And you know, one thing, we don't move forward if we're talking Republicans and Democrats. People are sick and tired of those partisan politics. The Pioneer Press has done a study the last couple of years, of how we vote and how often we vote for your party and how many times we vote for the other party. And what they have found is that out of 134 House members, I have been either number 2 or number 3 in being the most bipartisan. And that's how you get things done in rural Minnesota. It really is. So, to try to put political parties in various categories really doesn't work, and it's not very productive in the end.
All right, and I guess my question, you answered the question already right there. For Jason, where would you align yourself with your political party? Far right, middle of the road? Where do you kind of see yourself with the Republican Party?
You know, I'm a constitutional conservative. I think that when it comes to policy making, in the House right now, I would probably lean more towards the right side when it comes to cutting taxes, to opening up free market health care, not going the way of the single payer system. And I think, in short, I would lean more far right. I do think that there will need to be some work across the aisle if the governorship ends up going to the Democrats. Obviously, we need to work together, and I think the Republicans, led by Kurt Daudt as the Speaker, have done a great job working across the aisle, passing common sense legislation and really fighting for the values of rural Minnesota.
Let's talk about healthcare a little bit. We'll start with you, Paul. How do we address healthcare issues? What are the concerns with healthcare in Minnesota, and how do we fix them?
Well, I'd first like to just start. How many in here have been receiving those negative false mailers on me? I see a number of hands out there. There's a group, a big Twin Cities interest group that's out there with all sorts of negative advertising. And what they're saying is that I support a single-payer system. And I absolutely do not, never have. In fact, finally on one of those brochures, they actually listed a bill there because there's never anything. And it was House File 76 out of 2013. Well, I knew I never signed on to the bill. I looked back, and of course I didn't. So I'm not going to let them continue with these false advertisements. I contacted the Campaign Finance and Public Disclosure Board today on that. They sent me to the Office of Administrative Hearings. I contacted them. I am not going to let these Twin Cities interest groups have blatant lies, totally make things up. And the reason they do that is because they don't want people like myself and like Senator Kent Eakin, who are strong proponents for rural Minnesota. That threatens them. And they will do almost anything to try to defeat us out here. And 2 years ago, if you remember, the mudslinging on Senator Eakin and myself, and it's continued. And it's big city interests that do that. So getting that out of the way, don't believe any of that malarkey that you're getting in the mail. It just simply is not true. Here's my plan. The big concern is in the individual market right now, and that is your farmers, your small businesses, people who don't have insurance to their employer, who haven't reached 65 yet. And that's where we really have to address. And so, first of all, 2 years ago I supported the 25% premium credit or cut that we had. That lowered your health care costs. Now, they still went up, but it made them less than they would have been. Here's what I think we need to do. Where you have high premiums, we need to offer tax credits. Second, we need to take on the prescription drug companies. We really need to do that. We also have to expand more lower cost coverage to our farmers, our small business owners, and to our families. That's how you do that. And also what's really important is you've got to work bipartisan doing this. Because the more we fight about this, the more rural Minnesota suffers. 25% of rural Minnesotans are Medicaid or Minnesota Care. 25%, according to the Department of Health, can't pay their bills because of health insurance. This is a crisis, and while we get into these partisan debates, nothing happens. I think something we all agree on, taking on these prescription drug companies, giving low-cost coverage to folks who need that, and looking at some tax cuts for people with high premiums, I think would be a good way to do that.
First and foremost, we need to open up competition. We need to make, buying healthcare like buying car insurance, where you can buy it across state lines, where you can shop on your own behalf and go and get the coverage that you need at the price that you can afford. Right now, healthcare is the #1 topic when I'm out door knocking, no matter where it is around this area. That's the first question on everybody's mind is how do we fix healthcare? And we need to open up competition. We need to, knock down, like I said in my opening, there are places in Minnesota where you can only buy from one insurance company because of the way that it's set up right now. We've driven out these insurance companies from rural Minnesota and made it basically that it's a monopoly where these companies can charge whatever they want. They can charge ridiculous prices with high deductibles, high premiums. That's just not affordable. I've talked to a couple families, and one of them told me that they pay more for their health care than they do for their mortgage. That's not affordable health care. That's not even health care. That's just another bill that people have to pay. So we need to knock down these state lines. We need to increase competition, and then we need to go after the hospitals and make sure that there's more accountability. We should be able to go to a hospital and know how much a knee surgery is going to be, know how much a C-section is going to be. I talked to a lady, and she had to get a C-section, and she had no idea when they went in. It took them 6 months before they got billed, and all of a sudden they were shocked by what they had to pay. They had no idea throughout their whole process of what they were going to have to pay when it came to this. So we need to make sure there's more transparency and open up competition.
We have a very interesting dilemma here between the two candidates. Representative Marquardt, you served, I believe, 9 terms in the House, so lots of experience. Jason, I believe you are still a student at MSUM, a very young and fresh voice. Jason, talk about your youth and your fresh perspective and how that could best serve our district.
Yes, I am still a student at MSU. I will graduate here in December with my bachelor's in political science. So I'm finishing in 2.5 years in college thanks to the PSEO program that Minnesota offers. What I bring in, people always ask me what sets me apart as being somebody young, and by the end of the time when I talk to them, they say it's my passion, it's my drive, and this is something that I want to do. It's not, I didn't roll out of bed and go, I think I want to run for office. This has been something that I've wanted to do since I was 16 years old and was able to follow around my mentor in politics, Speaker Dowd, down at the Capitol for a few days and really see what a legislator is able to do. And ever since that point, I've wanted to be in the state legislature. This opportunity came up, and I think I bring fresh perspective. I think I bring a different perspective. I think I bring the youthfulness and the energy and the passion that we need in the state legislature to fight for our values here in Greater Minnesota.
And my question for you, Paul, is how's your experience best serve us?
Well, and you can be very enthusiastic and have a lot of energy with experience also. And I think people who know me and see me in the classroom and out and about know that. But I think it's really important because what you do over time is you forge relationships with other legislators. And Steve Drazkowski is a very, very conservative Republican. And he's the chairman of the Property Tax Division. And I could call him on my cell phone right now. I've got his number. And he would tell you how we have been working together on a bill to go further than what we did a couple years ago to help out farmers on their ag credit on school building bonds. That's a huge issue for rural Minnesota. In the last 3 years, when schools have gone to try to get a new building, in rural Minnesota the passage rate is only 44%. In the metro it's over 70%. That puts us at a disadvantage. And I think in rural Minnesota you should have the same opportunity as a student to have a good facility as someone in the wealthy metro. But we can't because part of the problem is we have a very unfair, untenable position we put farmers in when they have to pay a large percent in these rural districts and they can't afford it with commodity prices down and everything else. And so a few years ago, and Senator Kent Eakin strongly supported this also, we cut that 40%. Representative Drazkowski and I have been working on to completely eliminate that. We had a proposal that went into the tax bill and as a study so we could go further, but it was the first year we did that. That would help our farmers, it would help our schools, help our education, our system. That is over time that you develop those type of skills. But it's also, for example, being able to look at a tax bill or an education bill that might not help our area, even though your political party might be for or against it. You look at it and say, no, this is the way I'm going to vote on it because this, either helps or hurts rural Minnesota. Experience is good. I don't really tout my experience, quite frankly. But I think it helps every single day, and I think you always have to be there looking at new ways to look at things, and I've been always open to that.
My last question before we get to our closing statements. How will you work for rural America, as we got people listening, hauling the sugar beets to the factories, the pilots here today, and not just the farm workers, but everyone else, the healthcare providers, the small schools. How will you work for rural America to make life better?
Well, I think you hit some of them, and this is what I've done for a number of years, and I laid it out in my plan of putting rural Minnesota first. I mean, number one, you make sure our communities and schools are safe, and you support our law enforcement officers. That's number one, because if your community and school isn't safe, nothing else matters. That is number one. When I was the mayor in Dilworth, we used to send out a survey. And the first question we asked on the survey was how safe you felt in your neighborhood, because to me that was by far the most important thing. So you do that. And then you work on the economy. We know agriculture is a huge part of our economy. And so what can we do to help farmers? We can lower property taxes, for one thing. We can reduce regulations. When they try to do things with buffers and some of these things, you try to make sure it works. One size fits, doesn't fit all. Talking about, I want to mention a little bit about long-term health care. Twin Valley lost a nursing home. That was a punch in the gut to Twin Valley and the entire area. Not only are you losing 33 residents who have to move out, which is very stressful, we know that, but you're also losing over 50 jobs in the Twin Valley area by losing that nursing home. And there's a ripple effect. And, one thing in rural Minnesota is nursing homes are vitally important, not only for the care of our parents, but also for the economy. And, at the meeting the other night, and Senator Eakin and I have been talking about this, that facility was a VA licensed facility. And so it was brought to me by a constituent, maybe that could be used as some sort of a veterans care center. So we've been looking at that, checking with staff and seeing if possibly that could happen. I mean, so it's things like this that are crucial to the fabric of rural Minnesota. We've talked about education and all those types of things. But the bottom line is, what can we do to make sure we preserve the quality of life that we have in rural Minnesota and trying to improve and making sure that all the residents here can meet their visions and dreams and goals that they have for themselves and for their families.
Mr. Peterson, how will you fight for rural America?
Well, I think it starts by being more competitive in this area and by bringing competition back to this area. You look, we're so close, and to the North Dakota side, which in North Dakota was just, and I'll go back to the survey I mentioned in my opening, Minnesota being the least tax-friendly state of all 50 states. North Dakota was ranked 3 or 4 on that survey, and South Dakota was number 1 in terms of friendliness. So we need to be more competitive. We need to bring these jobs that are fleeing, to North Dakota and South Dakota. We need to bring them back. We need to bring businesses back to help our economy, and then we need to make sure that our farmers are being taken care of at the state level, that these one-size-fits-all regulations that are trying to be pushed on our farmers are not, and that the regulations that are pushed are worked with our farmers, and we work with our farmers to make sure that these are actually regulations that are actually going to do what they say they're going to do. And we need more affordable health care. We need to make sure that, Minnesotans work hard, especially in rural Minnesota. We're a hard-working bunch up here, and we need to make sure that we're keeping more of our hard-earned money in our pockets and not having to spend it on health care that, frankly doesn't cover us, on taxes, that, there's lots of wasteful spending in our state agencies down in Minneapolis and St. Paul, wasteful projects, like the new Senate offices that they built down there that they didn't need. And then, work with our police and work with our communities and making sure that we're keeping our communities safe and that we have, a law enforcement presence and that, we're funding our education systems so that our children have what they need to succeed.
All right, before we get to our closing statements, I want to thank both of you guys for coming here today and being a part of our broadcast on our Norman County Political Forum. You're both very bright and energetic individuals, and I think District 4B would be proud to have either one of you serving the district. Jason, we'll start with you for our closing statements.
Well, first off, thank you for moderating this. Thank you to KRJB for having us for having us, and Ada for having us here at the event center. Thank you to each one of you who are here today in person and who are listening, whether you're out in the fields or whether you're just staying home on this cold night. You know, I want to fight for our values, and I want to go down to St. Paul and put rural Minnesota first by fighting for our values and by lowering taxes and having affordable health care, and those are my top 2 priorities, and in making sure that we're spending taxpayer money wisely. As legislators, we need to make sure that we're spending the money wisely and we're not wasting the money. So, thank you again for everybody being here. Paul?
Well, Mark, thank you very much. Mr. Peterson, thank you for being here, and all the listeners out there and the folks that are here, also Norman County EDA and KRJB for sponsoring. You know, these elections are never about us, the candidates. They're about you. They're about you. And it's, in the time that I've represented Norman County, I know you and you know me. I've been at your doors, at your homes. I've been at parades. I've been at the fairs. I've been at National Night Out. I've been at various meetings and so forth. And I understand Norman County and the Ada area and throughout. I know that when you're sitting around that kitchen table, you're thinking about, you know, if you've got a secure, stable, good job, if you can take care of your family, if your kids are going to have it better than you did, are you going to be able to take care of your parents? And you sit around thinking about health care and the high cost and making sure our communities are safe and that you got a good education system. And those are the issues that I know folks are really talking about. And I think I'm in a good position to help continue to work on those, because it takes a bipartisan, common sense approach to do that. It's working with people. It's forging relationships. It's getting out into the communities and really knowing what's happening. And if the folks in Norman County and District 4B would give me the honor to serve them another term, I would be very proud to continue to work very, very hard to meet their goals and their needs and their dreams into the future, to make sure that we can keep rural Minnesota the great place it is. I wouldn't want to live or raise my family anywhere else than in rural Minnesota. So with that, thank you everyone, and for everyone, I appreciate your support on November 6th. Thank you.
Representative Paul Marquardt and Challenger Jason Peterson, thank you again for your time, and best of luck here in the 2018 election. Big thanks to everyone listening here on 106.5 KRJB. Thanks to Whitney Pittman, our engineer here on site, and Kaylin back at the studio. And again, thanks to Norman County EDA for sponsoring this event. And thanks to all you for attending, and thanks to all you for listening. And have a great night, and go out and vote November 6th.